Got the heat.
For the first time in history, suicides in the Black community here in the U.S. is on the rise. And now mental health experts are trying to figure out why. They say death comes in threes. First, it was 26-year-old Ian Alexander Jr., son of Academy Award-winning actress Regina King, committed suicide. 1 week later, former Miss America winner Chelsea Christ took her life at the age of 30. And on Monday, reports 31-year-old Walking Dead actor Moses Mosley died from a suspected suicide attempt. Dr. Brian Mahamdi, the director of behavioral health services at Henry Ford Health System, says the age range and race of these deaths are not a coincidence.
More so than any other demographic group, we've seen this just major increase among young Black adolescents and young adults, which is very new and really hasn't ever happened in the history of the U.S.
Their mental health is, really challenged at this time.
Patrice Lucas, a licensed mental health counselor, says Black millennials and the Gen Z generation are in a unique situation because up until this point in history, Black people have been in survival mode. But now many have the chance to thrive.
And so you take that deep breath and you start feeling, and it doesn't sit well with them. That's how we get ahead of it. Not just the individual counseling, it's the group counseling, it's the workshops, it's talking about mental health.
Another reasons experts say suicides are up among adolescents and young adults is because of social media. More people are aware of the issues not only happening in this country, but around the world, and there's a growing sense of helplessness.
Well, hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Serendipity. This is definitely, a sensitive topic. I am Dr. Nicole here out of Florida, and
hi, I'm Kimberly Shinnerbird here, broadcasting here from Northern Alabama. Lord Lavonda, Northern Virginia is where I am.
Hello. I am Lavonda, broadcasting from Birmingham, Alabama.
Awesome. And of course, you can see that we have a fourth person on our screen. So this is Dr. Tracy Marks, who we dare to say how far back we go, but it is all the way back to elementary school. So, we're still 33. So that was just a few years ago.
Yeah.
And Dr. Marks is a forensic psychiatrist. And so this is pretty exciting for me to be able to introduce someone like this that, I grew up in the same hometown of Daytona Beach, and she is definitely wanted by as an expert, forensic psychiatrist expert in the federal and, state courts. So she has lots of credentials, and I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about, her education and what have you. And then we're going to get into this topic about suicide. So thanks everybody for joining us. We got Running Doc 25. We've got Valerie Davidson. Woo woo for Valerie, because she does our stuff to get us started for the show. So thank you. And Patricia Ryan's joining us so far. So Dr. Marks, thank you for joining us. Tell us
Thanks for inviting me here. Yeah, I'm broadcasting from Atlanta. So real quick, I did my undergrad at Duke, and then I went on to do my medical school at the University of Florida. And then I did my general psychiatry training at the New York Hospital, Cornell campus, New York Presbyterian, it's called now. And then I did a year of forensic psychiatry fellowship training at the combined Columbia Cornell program. And I finished all of that in 2001 and then moved to Atlanta after that, where I've been practicing ever since.
Right. Wow. 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 That's good stuff. So I know everyone on here is saying, what in the world is forensic psychiatry? So can you just give us a little short definition of
Yeah,
that?
sure. People think of the forensic files, which has nothing to do with it. Um, it's the interface between psychiatry and legal issues. So, and that includes both civil and criminal. So, on the criminal side, would be things like competency to stand trial or determining if someone was insane at the time that they committed an offense, or if there's what we call mitigating factors, something that should make them maybe have less lenient or a more lenient sentence if they are found guilty. And then on the civil end are things like someone sues and for something, and they also claim that they have mental problems as a
Mhm.
result of whatever they're suing someone for, disability things. So it's kind of a wide range of things that I
Right.
do.
Right. Thank you so much for that. So our audience can have a little bit, and me, so I can have a little bit different. Because when I think of forensic, exactly like what you said, I'm like, okay, is that having to do with death or whatever? But
Yeah.
that would be the automatic thought. So, and this is no small potatoes. I mean, she's interviewed with Anderson Cooper. She has been on CNN and HLN. So scary, scary credentials, big stuff. So very proud of you. I'm just joking, but very, very proud of you for all of that. So we know that you have some expertise in quite a bit of expertise with, depression and suicide in the psychiatric, realm. And as everyone else is figuring out about these increases in suicide, we just kind of wanted to maybe get some basic information, first of all, from you about, the reasons for suicide, why we think those things happen, and and some of the impact, as we were kind of discussing right before the show.
Sure. Well, the clip that you show, that was just really chilling to see all of those people. Um, Suicide is one of those things that it leaves, it affects, it's very far reaching, because once it happens, most people who knew the person has some level of guilt about it. Like, how did I not recognize what was that this person was suffering that much? I wish I had offered my help. Children of parents who committed suicide can feel like it's their fault that they didn't do something right. I mean, and adult patients that I've seen where their parents committed suicide, they're never right. It's like
Mm,
a sore that just never heals.
mm,
But oftentimes people are depressed. It's a result of depression, but not always.
mm,
And it usually kind of culminates to a point where the person just feels so hopeless that they see no other way, or they just want to end their suffering. And so they
mhm,
just kind of want out.
mhm. Wow. That's pretty. I mean, it's chilling just hearing you talk about it. I know that as a doctor myself, but it's just so scary. And anytime I hear, anyone that has experienced that, and I've had many people close to me that have, it's just really scary. What do you think about the, people say, I've heard growing up that suicide is a selfish act. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that kind of speaks back to the issue of all of the destruction it leaves in its path, like all the people who hurt afterwards because they don't
Hmm.
understand. But for the person, granted, there are some people who say, "Well, fine, I'll just kill myself," and then they make an attempt, and then they're actually successful with it. Whereas maybe for years that was kind of a manipulative, an emotionally manipulative thing that they would use
Right.
against people. That's a whole separate group of people. In
Mhm.
general, though, when the person, it's like they have this tunnel vision when they get in this state of hopelessness, of just they cannot see, they're not reasoning that, well, yeah, these people will miss me and this and that. They don't see all that. and they don't think of it as selfish. They think of it as either relief, or some people will even believe that I'm helping all these people around me because they won't have to deal with me. So they don't see it as, I don't care about y'all, I'm just going to kill myself. It's more of, this is what the world needs, with me gone.
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
Even that is worrisome, right? I mean, that's huge that somebody would think that they're so insignificant that that would, just relieve everybody's pain. So, Lavonda, you want to start with, and I know you have some questions.
Sure, sure. What role do you think social media plays, if any, in mental health overall, and of course suicide?
Well, I think it's kind of multifactorial. So on the more surface level, kind of my knee jerk to that is building up to suicide. I think social media definitely contributes to insecurities and even people feeling anxious or depressed, often seen in the teen years, where all of these insecurities can just be even made worse through social media and seeing everyone's perfect pictures and perfect lives on their on their profiles. And even adults, I mean, it can be depressing looking at Facebook. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't live like that. What happened? Where's all these people getting this from? But anyway, so that's one kind of level of effect social media can have. But I think in more recent years, recent being since COVID, and even before that, maybe like 2019 and things, with all of the social unrest, 2016 and beyond, with all of the social and political unrest, and just seeing all that stuff in front of us, in front of our faces, and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, and all the killings and all of that, that is enough, I think, to overwhelm people and make you have questionably a distorted sense of safety and even like purpose in life. Like, what are we even doing? We're all just going to die because we're all just going to get infected or something. I mean, you can really get caught up in that.
Right.
Not only just from watching the news, but then staying on your device and social media and all the things that people propagate on there.
Absolutely. Wow.
Okay. And along those same lines, have you heard of the term post-COVID stress disorder? Because it's kind of basically what you were just saying.
Yes, I have. Only recently, though. And it's kind of, so it's not an official term yet. It may become one, but there's this, like, we're noticing, we meaning the group of, I guess, clinicians and medicine and science, are noticing that people are developing trauma-like symptoms as a result of COVID-related things, like experiencing multiple people die or multiple people get sick, or experiencing or having the illness themselves, and say not being able to breathe, having to go to the ICU and be intubated, and having this barely surviving, but surviving, and dealing with the aftermath of that. So there's these, so it's considered to be similar to an adjustment disorder. An adjustment disorder, or stress related disorder, is an official terminology in psychiatry, where someone has an event happens, a traumatic kind of event, and the reaction is out of proportion to what you would expect it to be, and it lasts for longer than what you would expect it to be. So we're believing that post-COVID stress disorder, or syndrome it's called, is a similar thing that's developing now, that's more specific to COVID.
Okay. And one last question. I work for a very large organization in mental health, and I do not know another African-American psychiatrist. I'm a therapist, but I know no African-American psychiatrist. How do you think that affects African-Americans' desire or comfort to come and seek mental health treatment when there's not someone that they feel like they can relate to?
Yeah, that is That's a very deep, far-reaching question, because I know growing up, I don't know that I even knew what a psychiatrist was.
I do.
And and as far as seeing a psychologist, it's like in the environment I was in, it's like, why would you go talk to someone you don't know, and tell your business? So it starts early, or at least I'll speak for me and my environment. It started early with this idea of Black people don't really go talk to people about their business. And then you add another layer of mental stuff is not anything real, just get your act together. So that also makes people not feel the need to see a professional, or even acknowledge that what they are experiencing is something that you need to see a professional for. It's just something you just need to get your act together about. And then I was just having a conversation about this with my husband the other day. I was reflecting on when I decided to go into psychiatry. So I told you I grew up I don't even know if I knew what a psychiatrist was. Well, so my introduction to it was in medical school. Well, I actually matched in internal medicine. That was what I had intended to do. The match process, for those who don't know, is like a draft process where you pick your specialty, you pick the place you want to go and do your training, they pick people, and you get matched together. So I actually matched in internal medicine, but I changed my mind during my last year of medical school because of my psychiatry rotation. I was interested in psychiatry. So it worked out that after the match, someone from my psychiatry program in New York couldn't go. And so they just moved me from one roster, the medicine roster, to the psychiatry roster. So I started in psychiatry. So I lucked out. So at my graduation party in medical school, I'm sitting at the table with my family and friends, and I'm like, just want to let y'all know, I'm not going to do medicine. I'm going to do psychiatry. And it was just like, all of a sudden, it was like freeze frame. Everyone was like, okay. That response of, oh, all right. And I know that my parents were not supportive, and maybe even a little ashamed, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. But my point is that here, even in my own home, even though I love my parents to death and they've always been behind me, this wasn't something they were necessarily behind.
Right.
So there's a lot of things working against having a Black person or person of color going all the way to being a professional in mental health. So here I even had to like block out having any shame or bad feelings about the specialty that I chose. All the more so for someone not feeling like they have the need to come see me in the first place. I mean, so it starts. I guess this long story is going to is, there's not a lot of minorities in the field, both because of blocks from even getting there in the first place, and then that paucity or lack of minorities also sets the groundwork to see the field as something that's not that important and not something to really talk about out loud, I think.
Wow. For sure. For sure. That brings up a lot of stuff. I know, Kimberly, you probably have some things after hearing that response, especially.
I do. I actually wanted to go back to when you were talking about family dealing with grief. Excuse me, as we spoke backstage, and I say backstage because I'm speaking into existence, where we'll all be on the same platform and sitting together. So we were talking about earlier how I shared with you that my brother passed away. He took his own life. However, my mother doesn't quite believe that. And I've noticed she's a minister. So of course, I'm sure you've heard that, you know, suicide is a sin. So for her to even fathom the fact that that was a possibility, that my brother did that, I don't think she quite believes it. But it was like there was no other explanation. I mean, and not to be too gory, he was 27, and he had a rifle, and excuse me, he shot himself in the face with the rifle in her home, in her basement.
Wow.
And she found him the next day. So in her mind, it was, oh, he was playing with this gun and it accidentally went off. But my brother was not that type of person. And I really hate to say this, but it's true. I would have thought him to be more homicidal than suicidal. So you know, that's the type of, it was just no other explanation but that he's been in and out of jail. He's been trying to get a job. He just couldn't handle it anymore. So we just all pretty much, besides her, came to that realization. But now me and my youngest brother, it's like our grief is it's hard to grasp. My mom goes to see my brother every Sunday. Me and my youngest brother, I think we've gone maybe 5 times. So it's like, how would you talk to a family whose grieving processes are different, or who have parents who are like, there's no way he could have done that? Like, how would you speak to that type of family? Speak in the African American community as well.
Yeah. I think I would take the position that everyone just has to cope in their own way, and that first of all, you can't even, for a parent to lose their child, I mean, that's just a whole nother level of grief in and of itself. But I don't see the usefulness in trying to, like, let's say she were my patient. I wouldn't see the usefulness of trying to make her realize or come to terms with, this was really suicide. Come on now.
Yeah.
Because it's not, that's her way of defending and protecting herself and cobbling together what little bit of strength, mental strength she has, and just, I'm not going to accept this as suicide. This is what happened. Yeah, it was an accident. That's a shame. I mean, that's really sad still, but it was an accident. Because the next level of he took his own life just opens up Pandora's box of pain and blame and shame and all that. And so I don't really see the point in trying to force that realization for her. So what that ends up meaning is, for the other children, like you and your other sibling, is accepting that you're not going to try and force it either. Just, she wants to handle it like that by saying, nope, I'm not going there. Then let her handle it that way. And then you all come to your own reckoning in your own way.
Okay. Thank you for that. I definitely makes sense and puts that in her shoes type of situation, because definitely kids are, for me, as young kid, like, no, mom, you're absolutely wrong. But then to try to protect her in the same sense, and it does get difficult at times. I also wanted to kind of leave that subject because I kind of feel myself getting a little worked up. But how would you respond? Because I hear this quite often, as I also told you, I got my bachelor's in psychology. And I get all the time, well, Kim, I know you can read minds. You got your degree in psychology, so you should have known what I was thinking. do you get that quite often?
Don't start. I would get to where I just don't even want to tell anybody what I do for a living, for that very reason. And back in the day when I was still single and I was going to more social stuff and things like that, and, you know, meeting new people and all, yeah, I wouldn't even want to say anything, because it would turn into this, oh, you better watch what you say around her and all that kind of stuff. And it's just so
Yeah.
irritating. And sometimes I would say, well, I don't want to think that hard. You know, it's more than just you mentioning something and I all of a sudden know what your issues are. I'm not trying to think that hard when I'm trying to socialize. Thank you. So I just, but I get that a lot. And now I just kind of ignore it.
I can imagine that's much harder. That's a whole different. I mean, it happens to physicians just in general. So you know, where everybody you can just know from them telling you one sentence about them that everything that somebody else did wrong or whatever, and you know, you can give them something to fix something that's been going on for 30 years. But that's pretty. Yeah.
I would think you would get that, Nicole, with someone mentioning, you know, they ate some junk food. Oops, no, I can't say that around you.
It happens all the time. Happens at church functions. You know, they're standing over in the corner, cowering over, you know, their plate of pizza. Oh, Dr. Or they see me with a plate of pizza. That's even, oh, Dr. Nicole's eating pizza. Yeah, because I don't eat pizza every day, but that's a whole different subject. Oh my gosh, yes. Oh, I can only imagine what you experience with that. So, so I actually, you know, I wanted to flip back. It's not necessarily on suicide, but how you talked about, you know, even having psychiatrists, Black or African American psychiatrists, even going in. First of all, Black physicians are very, very small percentage of physicians in the first place, and then we're talking about now an aspect of being a physician that has what Dr. Marks talked about, you know, the stigma related to that, or that we don't need that and we don't need to put our business out with anybody. And what are you going to do? Like, that's not even a real aspect of medicine. They don't even want to go to the doctor, so much less go to a psychiatrist. So, but what you spoke to is something that we talk about all the time in our mindset calls with our mentor, Mr. Tony Fleming, our teacher. He wants teacher. I'll say teacher, but I always say mentor anyway. But anyway, that's just to get under his skin. But but the whole programming that we go through with believing that we don't need that, and so then we don't reach out for help, and we continue to ruminate with that. Strangely enough, my history is that my mom was a nurse in psychiatric medicine. You know, in the psychiatric field, her whole with addiction and all different types of psychiatric things. So I was very in tune to psychiatric issues, you know, going and yes, you should go and talk to someone. She was counseling people, you know, as I grew up. So that wasn't a taboo for me, but I realized that it is for many, and definitely in our community. I think that hurts us because, quite honestly, at this point, I think that everyone needs a therapist or a psychiatrist, psychologist, somebody to talk to, especially with what you were talking about with all the things that have happened, you know, the Trayvon Martins and, you know, the suicides and all of this and the pandemic, all of these things together, it's a lot for all of us to carry. And talking to someone else that's going through it too, I don't know whether or not that's, I don't know how much that helps, but, you know, definitely, you know, what do you think, how do you think that we can change that conversation, you know, as we move from here, like we're having this conversation here, but how do we get people to feel more comfortable with, you know, seeking psychiatric help for mental health?
I think just chipping away at the biases a little bit at a time, just even with this, what we're doing here. But lately, there's been more people coming forward saying, hey, I've struggled with this, I've struggled with that. And, you know, Meghan and Harry and all these people, and some of these athletes coming forward saying, I struggle with anxiety and depression. And all of that has helped the cause, not just for Black people, but everyone to kind of come out of the shadows and say and admit that I have a problem, and that's okay that I have a problem, and I can get help for this problem, or I can try and address this problem, instead of just believing that it's not something they can talk about and just try and stuff it away, and then it just grows and gets worse. So in some ways, talking about social media being a detriment, I think social media has also been a help in spreading the word, in getting more information out there, making it a topic that can be talked about openly. I mean, even like with my YouTube channel, I've been doing it consistently now since 2018. But when I first tried to get it started around 2010, 2012, still it wasn't that popular to talk about like depression and things like that. You could talk about self-help, personal development, but not like what I call hardcore psychiatry. Whereas now people are just throwing out terms and talking about it very easily. And I love that because then that just helps everybody.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a question real quick? I actually we have a viewer who asked a question and it's not popping up over here. But so the question is, how do you start the conversation of mental health among your elders when you know someone or a family member that has a problem?
Okay. Among elders. So not quite sure what they mean.
Well, this person is my age, so I'm assuming
like a parent or something.
40,
like
50, maybe grandparents, maybe, or parent per se.
Well, so I'll address it like this, because I've been asked this question from time to time of how do I tell my parents that that I have a problem? I think about killing myself. How do I tell my parents? And because I don't think that they believe in this and stuff like that. So if this is kind of that same vein of the person that's asking the question is saying, I have this issue, how do I talk about it with elders? I would I suggest that people address it, like come from a place of, I want to tell you how I'm hurting. And here's what's going on, and kind of go from there and see how much they're willing to hear about. Because if you say something like, I think I have anxiety, or I think I have depression, that's too easy for someone to say, oh, boy, ain't nothing wrong with you. Or, you know how we are. But if you address it from, I'm hurting here, I would think a loving parent, aunt, uncle, loved one would be like, how are you hurting? Tell me what's going on. Well, I, wake up every morning and I could barely, like, my mind is scrambled. I feel like my heart is gonna come out of my chest. I feel like I need to go to the hospital sometimes. And this has been going on for a while. And just admit, I didn't think I could talk about this, and I was kind of ashamed to bring it up, but I'm bringing it up now because I want your help. Like, go back to I'm broken, and I want you to help and support me, as opposed to, I have this intellectual problem, this diagnosis, and I want to go somewhere and have somebody confirm that diagnosis. Usually people don't respond to that as well.
No, they don't. Yeah, the quotes. Yeah, she does that on her shows too. I'm going to use air quotes.
I let that slip. Sorry.
Right. That's okay. I use them all the time. They see me do it too. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think that's really important that you use. It's the terminology that you use that can win somebody over to help you and support you, rather than trying to use big terms that people don't really want to hear. I think too that what that allows you to do is that even if they don't go directly to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a counselor, it may get them to the doctor. And then once they're with the doctor, they can have that conversation, and then the doctor can make that recommendation. That can make it a little bit smoother, I think, for someone, even if you're talking about the elder. So I'll talk about my mom. Before my mom passing, a couple of years before she passed, I felt that she was depressed. She had had diabetes for a long time. She was kind of losing her mobility. So just feeling like she was getting older and not able to do the things. And so I talked to her about those things. She had a conversation with her doctor. I kind of had a side conversation with her doctor.
Mhm.
And then her doctor came to her rather than me saying, you need this. And then it can come from that third party, kind of like our business, where the third party validation, there's something magical about it that happens that someone else, even somebody that person doesn't know, can validate what you're thinking is going on and what have you. And so I think that that's a really good point, Dr. Marks, to change the language and ask for support or help. And definitely family they want to help you. They want to support you, even if they might not believe in what you need.
Mhm.
They still want to support you. So they're going to do, whatever they need to in order to do that. So I think that that's a really good point. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. And
That
let me just
answer.
say this, kind of backing up what you're saying. I think the primary care doctors are a great screener for that kind of thing. So whether it be family doctor, internist, or pediatrician even. So yeah, I think it's a lot more acceptable or palatable maybe to the family member to say, well, let's just go to the doctor. But they're talking about regular doctor, not
Right.
psychiatrist necessarily. And then this wasn't the question with elders, but with children or teens, if you feel like your parent doesn't want to hear any of this, try going to the school counselor. Maybe the school counselor could be the bridge person to then speak to your parent and help them see it as that third person.
Absolutely. I think that churches are also some place where you can go, because you have a lot of churches now that are doing counseling. They have counselors, they have trained counselors, and from a Christian perspective, so that makes people feel more comfortable initially, and then they can get into those other things. So yeah, definitely looking at resources and people knowing about resources. So maybe getting that information out there to our community. That they have different people that they can reach out to start the ball rolling, and then they can get to that end point where they need to be. So awesome. Well, this sounds like it could go on for we could stay here and just keep going, right? But we won't. But we thank you so much, Dr. Marks, for coming forward. I am
Yes, thank you.
immensely proud. I can't even tell you how my heart is just so full for having you and seeing what you've done. And definitely your YouTube channel, I think, brings something really, it just makes it something normal in our background that we need to discuss and talk about. And so it normalizes it, along with going to the doctor. You take your pet to the vet, all of that, all of us make it to. So I think that it normalizes having that discussion. So you are doing your part in your neck of the woods, which is actually global now, but I saw those numbers of subscribers. I love it, love it, love it. But yeah,
we're trying to get on her level.
Yeah, so keep doing that work. It's powerful
Plug
work.
away.
Yeah, so thank you so much. And so we're going to sign off, but please join us again next week on Serendipity, where we're going to have another exciting talk. And you'll get to see our ladies, but Dr. Marks won't be here with us next week.
But she will be back when we're on our platform and we're all in person. She will be back.
I'll be
Yes.
back. All right.
Yes,
All right.
yes,
I look
yes.
forward to that.
All right. Awesome. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good
Take
night.
care. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.